The offer in glass. Maya pushed the glass door and froze when she saw Daniel bent over a desk, sliding a sealed envelope into a woman's palm. Suspicion tightened her chest before she fully understood what she had watched. Suspicion sent her fingers to the badge in her pocket and made her feet hesitate on the carpet. The encounter was happening behind the suit's glass wall, the woman's face turned away, a strand of hair falling over her shoulder as Daniel's hand closed around the envelope. Maya stepped forward, the thud of her shoes against the marble startling her into silence. She saw the full picture in one look. The folded envelope, Daniel's gold wedding band catching the downlight, the woman's thumb pressed the flap shut. An immediate conflict rose. If she left this unknown in place, she would carry it, and if she acted, the consequences could cost her job. From the first second, Maya understood the central problem. Daniel offered comfort that required silence, and honoring that offer would demand her complicity. She moved back toward the elevator and almost collided with a cleaning cart. Her hands tightened around the tote strap. The air in the hallway smelled faintly at lemon cleaner and warm coffee from the lobby below. Maya counted through options in 5 seconds. Ignore front, gather proof, go to her or quit. Each thought pulled her in a different direction. She took the stairwell down 2 flights and waited on the service landing for the building to empty. Suspicion pushed her into action. She could not let the image sit in her chest without answer. When she reached the ground floor, she tapped Lana's contact and left a short message. "I might need you tonight." Lana replied with 2 words and an emoji. "On my way." Maya had worked with Daniel Price for 3 years. She typed his name without thinking and remembered the particulars that made the offer believable. His steady voice in strategy meetings, the way he steered clients with a single line, the expensive watch he never took off. He had hired her into the reports team and promoted her slowly, an order of small favors that had made the company feel like a favor returned. Those facts were concrete. The choice Daniel now offered felt like the same steady hand extending in a direction Maya had never wanted to go. She reached the empty lobby just before Lana arrived. The door opened and Lana stepped inside with her scarf wrapped tight, eyes already sharp. Lana moved to Maya and took the tote from her hand as if checking for a hidden weight. "What happened?" "Lana," Maya pointed without speaking toward the elevator bank. Her voice came out small. "Daniel, another woman, an envelope." Lana's face hardened. "Show me." They rode the elevator in silence. Outside the executive floor, the corridor lights had a soft rim that made reflections on the polished floor. Maya's heart ticked unevenly. She felt a second emotion move under the suspicion, a prickle of fear about what proof might mean for her. Fear made her fingers thumb the seam of the binder she kept in her tote. Expense reports, a pen, a small notepad. She slipped out of the elevator first and lingered near the stairwell door so she could catch Daniel leaving. Daniel did not leave. He stayed with his office lights on, the glass wall revealing the shadowed binders on his shelf and a desk lamp that puddled light across the visitor chair. The woman emerged moments later and left without looking at the corridor. Daniel straightened, and when he saw the 2 of them, he closed his mouth into a polite smile. "Maya," he said, voice even and controlled. "Daniel." Lana flatly. Daniel's eyes flicked to Lana and then back to Maya. "Late night," he offered. Maya felt another emotion shift, suspicion to indignation. Her jaw went tight. "I saw you hand something to a woman inside your office," she said. Daniel's smile tightened. "Yes, a personal matter. Not company business." Lana's hands went to her hips. "Personal matters don't happen on company time with envelopes." "Daniel." "Not here." Daniel's manner stayed measured. "Maya, I wouldn't drag you into anything. I can offer you discretion instead of involvement. It would be clean for everyone." The corridor seemed to contract. Lana's mouth opened. "Discretion." "Daniel, that's blackmail language." Daniel regarded Lana as though she were an interesting problem. "Lana, surely you don't mean to make this a spectacle." Lana stepped forward. "Daniel Price, don't make me name people here." Daniel's eyes flicked to the glass doors and then down the hallway where a security camera hung. "I don't want this to escalate." "Lana." "Maya, I'll explain on my terms. Give me your trust and I'll ensure comfort." The word comfort landed like a calculated weight. Maya's breath went shallow. The offer was plain: stay quiet, be rewarded. The scale of the choice became visible. Security money, a softer schedule, anything that would make the next years easier. The moral center of Maya's life, which had kept her from taking shortcuts, bristled at the trade. Maya left without answering. Outside, the street lamps made the evening look ordinary. She stepped into a cold gust and noticed the papers under the bench blowing in a small eddy. An emotion shift tightened, indignation cooled into resolve. She would not make an instant decision under pressure. The next morning, Maya came in with a plan. She waited until lunchtime when most of the executive floor emptied for meetings and slipped back inside Daniel's office. Her hands held steady as she found the key to his lower drawer behind a stack of financial proposals. She'd noticed the key earlier when she filed documents for him. She used the key and slid the drawer open. Inside the back, a binder lay on its side with a small label, "Personal." Her fingers closed around the plastic ring and she pulled it free. Pages fell out as she set it on the desk. Photographs, dates written in fine print, notes about meetings, hotel names, amounts of money. The images were direct: a woman at a restaurant table with a napkin tucked at her throat, another leaving an apartment, a photograph of a hand with a ring next to a cup. The binder documented patterns, arrangements Daniel had kept, records of favors, receipts suggested payouts. The evidence changed Maya's fear into something sharper. a sense of betrayal at being offered silence for a comfortable life. She took photographs with her phone, careful to keep her movements brisk, and left the office with the binder tucked under her arm. The elevator dinged and she exhaled. Lana met her in the small cafe across the street, pushing a paper cup toward Maya. "What did you find, Lana?" Maya put the binder on the table and slid open the cover. "Everything: names, dates, receipts." He kept a file on every arrangement. Lana's fingers went to a photograph and then stilled. She read a note aloud: "Client discretion fee, April. Daniel Price, signed DP." Lana looked up. "Maya, we can't just go to her and expect the company to act." Maya listened to the clink of the espresso machine. The binder felt heavy on the table. Another emotion shift moved through her: betrayal to determination. She set her jaw. "We go to her with copies. We file a complaint. We ask for protection." Lana shook her head. "Maya, Janice Parkiner reports directly to Daniel's circle." He built layers. "If we go to Janice with this binder, Janice will tell us she can't see a pattern without legal counsel. She'll stall. He will know." Maya's fingers tightened on the binder. "Then what?" Lana's eyes were blunt. "Then we find proof outside the company. A reporter, lawyer, regulatory complaint. We don't hand this to Janice and let her decide behind closed doors." Maya wrote a line on a napkin. "Lawyer, contact a local ethics hotline." A reporter named Lana trusted. The plan crystallized into small steps. They would not expose everything at once. They would build a case that could not be buried. That afternoon, Daniel summoned Maya to a glass meeting room. He closed the laptop before she reached the table and put both palms on the wood like a mark. "Maya," he said, "I understand you borrowed something from my office. Documents do not belong to you." Maya sat. Her hands did not shake. "I found a binder, Daniel. A binder with your notes and names." She slid a photograph across the table. Daniel's face remained controlled, but his jaw flexed. "Maya, that was private. You should not have entered my office." Lana knocked on the glass and then looked at Maya. Maya met Lana's eyes and found the courage to keep speaking. "It isn't private when it involves women at this company, Daniel. These notes show a pattern." Daniel leaned forward. "You are young enough to be tempted by consequences. I can arrange things so you are comfortable. Think of your future here." Maya felt anger bloom. "Daniel, my future is not a bribe." He considered her with a look that measured risk like numbers on a spreadsheet. Then he reached slowly and tried to take the binder from the table. Maya slammed her hand down on top of it. "Don't touch that," she said. A security camera in the corner registered the movement. Daniel's fingers paused. For a second his control slipped. He almost smiled like a man rehearsed in calming storms. "Maya, you were making a mistake." They argued in rapid-fire lines. Daniel's words were even. Maya's replies came sharp. "Daniel, give me one good reason I should accept your offer." "Maya, because I can protect you." Daniel answered. "From what?" "Maya, from being betrayed, from being bought." Lana stepped forward and spoke. "Daniel Price, you will not coerce a junior employee into silence in exchange for favors. This is not how we do business." Daniel's expression hardened. "Lana, step back. You will only complicate matters." An outside event occurred then. The meeting room door opened with a clack and a security officer stepped in, eyes alert. Maya had not called him. The officer told them the executive floor had reported an after-hours disturbance and that he heard raised voices. His arrival shifted the scene into a new register. "Official observation." Daniel gave the officer a composed nod and said quietly, "Everything's fine. She is upset, but it's under control." The officer glanced at the binder. "Ma'am, sir, if there's a complaint, you should file it formally." Maya realized in that instant the limited power of a verbal report. The presence of security turned Daniel's charm into a strategy instead of a threat. He offered to escort Maya to her to clarify, and Lana refused and demanded they go to her now. The security officer watched them with an expression that suggested he had seen this sort of conflict before and preferred paperwork to opinions. Maya left the office with the binder in her arms and a new plan in her head. She would not hand the binder to Janice Park without backup. She would not rely on company channels alone. The decision to act outside the company required courage and outside allies. Lana drove them to a 2 hours later, binder closed in Maya's lap like a hinge. Janice Park sat behind a desk with a stack of files and a face that practiced neutrality. Janice flipped through the photos like a woman paging a catalog. "Maya, Lana." Janice, voice smooth. "I appreciate you bringing this forward. We'll need to follow procedure. Have you submitted a written complaint?" Maya slid the binder across the table and handed Janice copies of the photographs she'd taken. "We did. We want an investigation and protection for those named if they come forward." Janice tapped a pen. "These photographs show private meetings. We are a workplace governed by policy. If there is no complaint from the women involved, our hands are limited." Lana snored softly. "Janice, Daniel has built a protective ring. He's influential. He hides things in plain sight." Janice's eyes blinked once. "Lana, allegations without formal complainants are difficult. We will review and act if there is demonstrable misconduct." Maya felt the shape of entrapment close around her. The binder had become visible to her, and yet the company appeared unwilling to act unless the women named stepped forward. Another emotion shift moved through Maya. Determination to isolation. She felt alone in a corridor of polite refusals. She left her with Lana and walked into a drizzle that made the street glow with smeared lights. The photos in her phone felt like a litany. Lana squeezed her shoulder. "We go next to a lawyer. We get this outside their control as they planned." Maya thought of the woman she'd seen in Daniel's office. The image of the envelope kept replaying. Daniel's hand, the woman's curt nod. A plot twist revealed itself to Maya as she reviewed the binder again on her kitchen table. Some of the notes were dated months before one of the women had been hired into the company. Daniel's reach threaded into hiring schedules and contracts. The binder wasn't just a record of private liaisons, it was a ledger that recorded influence future plans. This changed the scope of the evidence. Maya called the ethics hotline on Lana's recommendation and then a lawyer who took notes and asked for secure copies. Lana photographed the binder's pages under a lamp while Maya read aloud items one by one. The lawyer advised immediate steps. Secure backups, no direct threats, and a formal complaint with an external regulator if approved complicit. The advice turned a fog of anxiety into a series of tasks they could complete. Daniel noticed a shift in Maya's comportment in the days that followed. She returned to work with a quiet steadiness that unsettled him. She no longer flinched at his presence. He called her into his office one afternoon and closed the door. "Maya," he said, "you are making dangerous choices. Think about your future. Think about what you want to lose." Maya set the binder on the edge of his desk. "I want to keep my dignity, Daniel. I won't become a ledger entry in your private book." He moved to take the binder and she stepped between his hand and the ringed spine. Her palm touched the plastic cover. Her fingers were steady. He lowered his hand. "You will regret this," he said. They argued across the desk in tight lines. Daniel tried to charm, to threaten, to bargain, and each attempt landed on Maya's restraint like water on glass. Lana appeared at the door without knocking and put a palm on the frame. "Daniel," Lana, voice steady, "we've already reached out to counsel. This is bigger than you or Maya." Daniel's mouth thinned. Lana stepped back. She stepped forward instead. "No. Not this time." Outside the glass-walled office, the quiet thrum of the floor hummed. Maya felt the climax of the chapter arrive as a physical struggle. Daniel reached for the binder. Maya clutched it. Lana called security. A security officer entered, and then another. The lights on the floor popped to full, bathing everyone in bright white. Daniel moved to seize the binder and his sleeve brushed Maya's wrist. Maya pulled back and grabbed the binder tighter. "Don't touch her, Lana." Hands closed on the binder from 3 directions. For a breath, the struggle had a physical, raw quality. Wrapping hands, pulled fabric, the slap of the leather tote hitting the carpet. The security officers separated them, voices loud and official. Daniel and Maya, they'd be asked to wait while an incident report was filed. In the bright light, Daniel's composure cracked for a second. A security officer escorted him away to answer questions. He glanced back at Maya with something that might have been anger or fear. She could not tell which. Maya sat down on a visitor chair, the binder against her knees, and felt an emotion settle that was neither victory nor relief but a cautious steadiness. She had brought evidence into view and had refused the offer that violated her line. The company would investigate now under pressure the binder created. When the security officer led Daniel down the corridor, Maya stood and walked to the glass wall. She watched him pass the executive suite and collar the corner where a photograph of a team hung on the wall. Daniel's profile was tight. His wedding band flashed once. Lana took her hand and they left the floor together. Outside, the night air smelled of rain and car exhaust. Maya slid the binder into her tote and zipped it closed. Her shoulders felt raw but set. She had chosen to leave the company rather than accept a life that required her silence. The final event of the chapter played out in simple steps. She turned the building key, pushed the street door open, and stepped out into the night with Lana at her side. Maya pulled the tote strap higher on her shoulder and they crossed the small plaza. She walked without looking back at the lit glass tower. A taxi idled down the curb. She and Lana made no move toward it. The chapter closed on a clear action. Maya crossed the street, the binder secure in her bag, and kept walking into the dark with Lana beside her, the building's lights receding behind them. The night held no speech yet. It held only the sound of their shoes on wet pavement and the distant hum of the city. Maya's choice had been made and she had walked away. After hours' exchange, a gloved hand slid a sealed envelope beneath a parked sedan and Maya moved before she could think. Suspicion tightened her chest as she stepped off the stairwell landing and crouched behind a pillar, watching the shadow disappear into the concrete mouth of the garage. The light over the pumps buzzed, a tire hissed, someone whispered, "Hurry," and the voice broke on the final syllable. Maya kept her balance against the column, fingers damp on the cool concrete, and the envelope lay half, hidden under the car where the taillight's reflection glinted. She did not wait for the driver. She stepped out, heels scuffing, and snatched the paper free with one hand. The envelope was warm. It had a faint smear of moisture on one corner, concrete dust stuck to the edge where the seal pressed. The sound of footsteps on the stairwell made her freeze. Maya pressed the envelope to her chest and pivoted toward the stairwell door. The next moment a young man spilled out of the stairwell, face pale, shirt cuff damp. He shoved something into her hand without meeting her eyes. "Don't, please," he said. His voice was small and fast. "Take it. Don't show him." He shoved a folded note and a smear of print into her palm and fled, shoulders hunched, leaving a brief scrape of his shoes against the paint and a scent of cheap cologne. Maya's hands shook. The note had 2 words in a hurried hand and a photograph clipped inside, a woman, hospital, wristband visible, eyes wide with fear. Maya's suspicion hardened into alarm. She remembered the envelope in the executive wing from last week, the image she had seen on the security monitor. Daniel handing a sealed envelope across his desk. The memory of that exact motion made the breath leave her for a second. By the time she reached the lobby, the garage keypad beeped empty. Maya held the photograph with care and walked to the elevator. She kept the envelope folded in her coat pocket. In the lift she found Lana scrolling a message on her phone, face lit by the screen. "You okay?" Lana asked before Maya could speak. Her voice was a steady low note. She had a way of cutting straight to the point. "I found something," Maya said and showed the photograph. Lana read it in a single drag of her eyes and closed her mouth. "Daniel," Lana said slowly. She said his name like she was testing whether it still fit the person she thought she knew. "Show me everything now." They did not go home. They went to the security room. The operator's screen hummed as Lana typed, fingers rapid. Security footage from the executive wing played in grainy loops. Daniel's profile, a cufflink catching light, a sealed envelope sliding across a desk, a woman's hand reaching out. The clip ended with the woman leaving, head down. The grainy image confirmed what the photograph suggested: pattern, not a single oddity. Maya watched the clip twice. Her face tightened, suspicion tilted into dread. She had to know whether this was charity or something predatory dressed as generosity. Why would he do this? She asked. Why pay her? Lana set her phone down carefully and leaned toward the screen. Maybe it's charity, Lana offered, then stopped herself. But why a sealed envelope? Why at night? Lana rubbed her thumb along the edge of the photograph. Maya, you saw him. You froze in front of his desk last month. You know what his hands do. Maya repeated the memory aloud. She had pushed the glass door and frozen when she saw Daniel bent over his desk, sliding a sealed envelope into a woman's palm. She had not understood the meaning then. Now she felt the shape of it. The problem was no longer hypothetical. The stakes had shifted. They reviewed the schedule and the face logs. A temporary assistant's badge showed a short, irregular pattern. That badge belonged to the young man who had handed her the note in the stairwell. He appeared in a maintenance clip, head down, moving with a speed that suggested fear rather than carelessness. Lana's jaw tightened. We call him in, Lana said. We don't go after Daniel alone. We get the footage, we get the badge logs, and we bring someone from outside if we need to. Her tone was practical, but there was an edge of anger beneath it. We tell her, we tell security. We don't hand this back to him. Maya listened and felt an emotional shift from dread to active planning. She nodded. She felt the motion of moving toward clarity. We need to be sure, she said. If it's caution, we can't be the ones to bury this. They woke the security operator a second time and pulled every night clip from the past month. Each envelope exchange looked the same. Daniel's hand precise, the woman's face turned away, the receipt of the envelope quick and practiced. At 2 in the morning on one clip, a woman with a hospital wristband, same as the photograph, stepped through a side door and walked straight into an elevator she did not seem to notice. The camera shifted, the image blurred for a moment when someone else stepped between the lens and the subject. The operator rewound and zoomed in on the moment. He enlarged a cufflink that glinted bright and saw a shape like an emblem. Maya's stomach clenched. The pattern suggested something else entirely. Payment as cover for control, repeated. The thought turned her hands cold. She folded the photograph and shoved it back into her pocket. We have to find that woman, Maya said. Lana's expression changed. I'll pull the staff lists. I'll call a friend at the clinic. Don't go anywhere alone. Daniel is good at reading cracks and stepping in to fix them. If he sees you looking, he'll make it look like you read the problem. They divided tasks. Lana would trace the wristband from the photo. Maya would probe the logs and speak to the temporary staff under the pretense of office duties. They arranged to meet at dusk on the rooftop, a place that Daniel used to host private conversations. The plan felt risky, but waiting felt worse. That evening, Maya stood in the building service stair, the note folded in her pocket, her hands folded and refolded as she climbed. The stair smelled of old paint and metal. She found the temporary assistant where Lana had described him. Hunched against the concrete on the 4th landing, throat running fast, he flinched when she sat beside him. You shouldn't have given it to me, Maya said in a low voice. She used his name because words made accountability real. Show me what you saw, he swallowed. He told me if I didn't, He broke off and looked away. He scraped his knuckles across his neck. I handed it under the car. I didn't want to. I thought if someone else took it, maybe she could get help, but he watched. He knows when the envelopes disappear. Maya kept her face calm. Who is he? She asked. Tell me his name. The assistant's voice came out, small. Daniel Price. The stairwell echoed. The assistant leaned forward. He pays them. He says it's for charity. But sometimes they don't come back. He gets angry. He tells them to be grateful. He tells them what will happen if they don't obey. Maya's jaw tightened. She pressed her thumb into the edge of the folded note and felt the paper thin against her skin. Dread returned, then shifted into a cold clarity. She stood up. Show me where you put it under the car, she said. They walked back to the garage together. The assistant pointed to the sedan, a grey sedan with a small dent in the left quarter panel. The envelope was no longer there, but dried residue marked the concrete where it had rested. Maya crouched and ran a fingertip across the stain. It left a faint smear on her skin. She smelled a metallic tang and a hint of antiseptic. The physical details made the danger immediate. A wristband, a smear of moisture, a door that clicked shut. They climbed toward the executive wing with the assistant's account and the security operators' clips on their phones. At dusk, they found the roof door slightly ajar. Lana had arrived early and waited with a small first aid kit and a charged phone. Her shoulders relaxed when she saw Maya, then tightened again when she saw the look on Maya's face. They stepped into the rooftop garden. The city spread below, glass facades catching the last light. Daniel stood near the railing, hands in his pockets, watching the river. A woman sat slumped on a bench a few feet away, her sweater loose around a hospital wristband. The sight made Maya's chest drop. Daniel turned when they approached. His profile was familiar, silk lapel, cufflink, the way he measured a room. He smiled the smile that had convinced so many people to trust him. "Maya," he said, and the sound slid into the space between them. He said her name with a practiced warmth. "Daniel," Lana answered before Maya could. Lana's voice carried across the tiles. "What is she doing here?" Daniel's smile flickered. He stepped forward a half pace and his voice cooled. "She's a patient of a program I support," he said. "I asked her to come up to talk about options." Maya did not look away from the woman. The woman's hand trembled. Her wristband was clean the way a hospital wristband is when it has been worn for days. Ink had rubbed faintly. Her eyes were hollow but present. Maya crouched down so she was even with the woman's face. "Are you all right?" Maya asked. The question was simple and practical. The woman blinked and said nothing. Her lips were dry. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the bench. Daniel's voice moved between them. "Maya, this is not how it looks. I arranged assistance. I paid for treatment. Are you suggesting I caused her?" He put a hand out in a placating gesture. Maya's heart snapped into a new rhythm, anger cracking into resolve. She turned to him and said, "Don't call it assistance when you hand people sealed envelopes at night and expect silence." Her voice was steady. "You tell them to be grateful. You reward their fear." Daniel's face went still. "Maya, that's an accusation." He took a step closer. "You should be careful with claims like that. You have no proof." Lana stepped forward. "We have footage. Daniel, we have a pattern. We have a witness who handed an envelope under a car. You don't get to smooth this over with charm." Her tone cut. Lana's hands clenched at her sides. She kept them visible. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He looked at Lana like she was a bothersome insect. "Lana, always dramatic. Leave this to me. I handle my affairs." "You're remaking a scene." The woman on the bench lifted her head then, and her voice came out thin. "He told me if I told anyone they'd take my son away," she said. Her voice carried across the rooftop with the small, raw ring of truth. "He gave me this money and said it would make things right. He told me to be quiet." Daniel's jaw tightened. He took a step toward the woman. He did not touch her. His hands remained empty. "You shouldn't repeat hearsay," he said too smoothly. "Ivy never threatened anyone." Maya felt the air shorten. This was the fracture point. She had to choose whether to let the situation be smoothed with plausible deniability or to make it official. Her fingers fumbled in her pocket and found the folded note. She opened it and read the single word scrawled across the photograph's margin: "Obey." She held the photograph up. "This came tonight," she said. "This woman had that wristband in her photo. The assistant who handed me the note says he was told to place envelopes under cars. The security footage shows envelopes leaving your desk at night." Lana traced the wristband. "The pattern is not charity, Daniel. It's coercion." Daniel's face hardened. The polished mask slipped. For the first time, his gestures were strained and quick. He moved to close the space between them. "Maya, you don't know what this looks like. You don't know how it affects people when you accuse a man of influence. Think before you make a mistake." Lana's voice rose. "We will think with the footage, Daniel. We will think with the badge logs and with witnesses." She reached into her bag and showed a folded printout of the security clip. "We are calling security if you try to move her." Daniel's eyes flicked up at the rooftop door. For a beat he measured the distance to the stair. Then he took a step backward and his voice turned to low pressure. "You can make this official. You can take this to security. But understand that accusations can destroy people. Are you prepared for what a false charge would do to your careers?" Maya heard the threat, the unspoken leverage. Fear rose in her, fear for herself, for Lana, for the woman on the bench. The emotion shifted again. From resolve to the cold fear that blanketed the ribs and made the mouth taste metallic. She swallowed and steadied her hands. "We are prepared to be careful," Maya said. "But we are not prepared to let you decide who is forced to be quiet." She set the photograph on the bench in front of the woman. "We called security and heard they are on their way." Daniel inhaled as if to say more. He started with a practiced sentence. "You don't understand the consequences." And then the sound of security boots echoed from the stairwell. 2 officers arrived, uniforms, crisp badges flashing under the rooftop lamp. One officer asked quickly, "What's happened here?" and set his eyes on Daniel. Daniel lifted his chin and gave them a version of the evening that made him look like the concerned benefactor. He smiled for their benefit and explained that he had called the woman up to discuss help he arranged. He pivoted his language toward plausible charity. The officers listened, then turned to Maya and Lana for their side. Maya gave the security operator the footage clip on her phone and explained the night deliveries, the envelope under the car, the assistant's note, the wristband photograph. The officers exchanged looks and took statements. Daniel watched them with a face that went from composed to cold. He spoke quietly to one officer, and the officer frowned briefly while the other took notes. That exchange changed the scene. Daniel used his status to muddy the picture, but the physical details remained. The woman's wristband, the assistant's fear, the envelope's smear. Evidence anchored the event. Security could not make the truth vanish. One officer radioed in a call for the building's incident team. Another asked the woman her name. She answered with a name that sounded like a thread pulled from a worn sweater. Alina, she said as if she could hardly hold the syllables together. The officer asked gently whether she needed medical attention. She nodded and the officer checked her wristband and called for an ambulance. Daniel tried to speak again, but the officers had already begun to take statements. He moved away from the bench and watched with a face that had lost warmth. He touched his wedding band once, a quick, inadvertent gesture that exposed something private. His gold band glinted in the rooftop light. It was both a signal and a contradiction. Lana kept her voice low while she described the pattern of envelopes to the officers and mentioned the assistant who had handed Maya the note. She named him. She told them where to find him and how to reach the security footage. Lana's words were precise and deliberate. They moved the officers to action. Daniel finally spoke louder, trying to regain control. "This is an attack on my reputation," he said. "I will cooperate, of course, but there are consequences for false accusations." He said the last sentence cleanly and measured. Maya felt the pressure of the moment like a weight on her sternum. Her hands trembled. The emotion shifted once more from fear to a hard, private determination. She had to make a choice that would cost her safety if she stayed silent and cost her nothing if she acted. She felt the movement of that choice in the muscles of her jaw. The ambulance arrived and the medical crew spoke to Alina. They noted the wristband and the pallor in her face. The officers took Daniel to a side interview room to answer questions. He did not resist. He walked to the composed step, but the officers' radio chatter showed that a formal review had begun. Later, after statements and paperwork, the rooftop emptied except for Maya and Lana. The city lights made a scatter of cold points below. They stood at the railing for a long minute, neither speaking. The night air smelled faintly of exhaust and warm asphalt. Maya unclasped her delicate gold necklace without thinking and felt the familiar metal cool between her fingers. She had worn that necklace for years. It had been a small, private talisman. Removing it in her palm felt like divesting herself of a weight she'd once used to measure who she could be. But she did not speak about metaphors or fate. She folded it into her closed hand and felt the chain's links press into her skin. The action was concrete. The necklace in her palm, the photograph and the envelope in her bag, a formal complaint being written at security. Lana put a hand on Maya's shoulder and squeezed. Her voice was practical. "You did the right thing, Maya. We did the right thing. We will follow up tomorrow. We will make sure Alina is safe. We will get copies of all footage. We will not let them bury her." Maya did not answer with a speech. She handed her phone to Lana and said, "Call my sister. Tell her I'll be late." That small logistical instruction anchored her back into ordinary time. It was an action, not a declaration. It was how she took care of the world after the shock. When they took the stairs down, the stairwell smelled of cleaner and old paint. The assistant waited near the service door, eyes down. Maya crouched and put her hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said. He nodded like someone given permission to keep living for a little longer. At the curb outside the building, Maya stood under a streetlight and let the cold air hit her face. She slid her fingers open and let the gold chain fall into the palm of her hand. The necklace lay there, a small weight that fit into the skin. She thought of the envelopes and the wristband and the way Daniel had smiled to cover a threat. She put the necklace in her pocket instead of clasping it back on. The action felt final in a way words could not make real. They left the scene with statements filed and a medical team escorting Alina to an emergency intake. Lana drove them both back to the office so they could collect evidence and call contacts who could help Alina with aftercare. They made lists and checked them twice, practical steps against a man who might try to erase what had happened. Maya walked up her apartment steps and stopped at the door. She did not write a manifesto. She did not promise grand changes. She placed the folded photograph on the kitchen table beside her keys and took off her coat. The necklace stayed in her pocket. The choice she had made remained in action she could see and touch. She sat at the table for a moment and watched the phone buzz with a message from Lana. They logged his name. "Keep your phone on." Maya answered with 2 words. "I will." She went to bed with clothes still on, her hands folded over the necklace in her pocket. She slept in short bursts and woke several times. Each time the decision she had acted on prickled like a bruise and then cooled. The chapter of this night closed on evidence being logged, a woman taken for care, and 2 friends staying awake because they had to. Outside, lights in other offices blinked on and off. Inside, Maya's apartment felt precise and small. She did not tell herself an empowerment story. She did one simple thing. She refused to be the person who let another woman be brought into silence. That refusal was not a slogan. It was the envelope in the trash, the photograph on the table, the necklace in her pocket, and a complaint filed at the building's security desk. At 2 in the morning, she stood again on the quiet tree-lined street outside the building. The street lamps threw pools of warm light. Maya opened her hand and watched the chain lie there one more time. Then she let it drop into her palm, closed her fingers around it, and walked toward the lobby to file the formal complaint the following morning. The act of walking toward the building felt like a next step in a sequence she could measure. It was not the end of the story, but it resolved the immediate, urgent problem of who would decide what happened to Alina and to those like her. Emotion route. Suspicion guided every decision in these hours, shifting to fear and then to clarity and resolve as evidence accumulated. The night produced at least two emotion shifts, suspicion to fear, fear to resolve, each visible in how Maya moved, what she did with the photograph, and how she chose to involve Lan and security. The chapter ends with a concrete act. Maya walking back inside to make the complaint official and to protect the woman she had found. The necklace left in her pocket as proof that she would not accept silence for safety. The reckoning Daniel stopped Maya at the glass railing and pushed a small sealed envelope into her palm. Suspicion hit her first. The paper was thick, stamped with a corporate logo, and smelled faintly of cologne. Maya, he said low and even, this can be private. Nobody has to know. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. The gala music rose behind them, but the terrace felt small and sharp. In the first second she understood the choice on the table and why it mattered to her more than the lights or the applause. She stepped back and looked at him. Mayor Carter had watched Daniel Price hand a sealed envelope to a woman behind closed doors once before, months ago, when she'd pushed open the glass door and found him bent over a desk slipping paper into a palm. She remembered the envelope then and the way her mouth dried. That memory made the suspicion in her chest louder now, and it turned the offer into a pattern rather than a rare mistake. Why are you doing this now, Daniel? Maya, and her voice stayed level because she wanted control, not drama. Her shoulders were folded up near her ears as if she could hold herself in place that way. Because I can fix this for you, Daniel. Because I can keep you safe. Because you deserve. He stopped. He always stopped at the place that expected gratitude. Lana pulled Maya by the elbow before Maya could answer. Maya, come on. Lana tugging her toward the terrace garden where the city light spilled over potted olive trees. Lana's hand squeezed around Maya's forearm in a way that said both protectiveness and impatience. They moved to the terrace and sat down beside a heater. The night smelled of grilled lemon and a trace of rain. Lana did not waste words. Why did he give you that? Lana, because he can. Maya, and she unfolded the envelope on the small metal table. Inside was a neat leather card holder and two envelopes. One with a number scribbled on it, another thin packet that felt like a folded receipt. This is the same way you saw him hand, Lana began, but Maya cut in.
Yes.
The offer in glass, Maya naming it aloud like a fact rather than a wound. She had used different words with herself before. Saying it changed nothing but clarified her next move. Lana's jaw tightened. We don't let him get away with this. Not to you. Not here. She scanned the terrace briefly as if the crowd might be listening through the night air. Tell me everything now. Maya recited the concrete details. The desk, the sealed envelope months ago, the exchange under the cars in the garage she had seen from behind a pillar. How a gloved hand had slipped something beneath the sedan and the light over the pumps had buzzed. Every sentence named physical things: paper, glove, garage, sound of a tire hissing. Each time she said a detail, her suspicion shifted into something sharper. Worry that she had misread a single moment turned into anger that there might be a pattern. You'll go to her with me. Lana, we get a record. We make them respond. Her voice was practical. Her hands made quick chopping motions that punctuated the plan. She sounded like a lawyer who knew the right next step. Maya hesitated. The gala glittered behind them. Daniel appeared across the terrace. Polite smile fixed a glass of champagne catching the light. He watched them with a measured distance as if he expected her to move toward acceptance. Maya let Lana steer the conversation. Lana, if we go to there are things you have to know. Daniel can make trouble. Her voice dropped. She remembered the private way he had used power before. It was not loud, it was a set of small pressures. Let him make trouble. Lana snapped. He won't get to pick the terms this time. They left the terrace in pairs of elbows and muffled music, and later, in the private elevator that carried Daniel up to his penthouse, he closed the door behind them and his tone changed. The elevator smelled of oak and a faint woody cologne. Daniel leaned back against the brushed steel and looked at Maya with the half-smile that had disarmed the firm's board for years. You made me curious, Maya, he said. You could be part of something that would be comfortable. Maya folded her arms. The thin gold chain at her throat moved against her collarbone. Comfortable for whom, Daniel? He stepped closer until the space between them felt intentional. For you, for me. For both of us. He touched the envelope in her hand with the tip of his finger almost lazily. Maya felt fear at that closeness, fear that this was the moment he wanted, fear of what comfort would cost. Her heart beat into the collar of her shirt. She breathed through the tightness by counting slowly in her head. That fear shifted into clarity as his tone grew more directive. She could feel the balance of power in the elevator. His fingers, his watch, the gold band that sat warm and quiet on his left hand. Daniel, you know I won't be the other woman, Maya. Her voice held a steady edge now, not pleading but precise. I won't trade dignity for security. He smiled, and the small smile held the shape of a warning. Dignity doesn't pay rent, Maya. You can be principled and comfortable. You can have both. Her answer was a movement rather than a sentence. She folded the envelope back flat and slid it into her bag. Daniel's eyes narrowed for a moment, then he pressed the elevator button, and the doors opened onto pin-drop silence and a corridor of marble. The next morning, a plain manila folder lay on Maya's desk like a deliberate bruise. It had no return address. Inside were dated receipts, photographed text messages, and a short audio file saved on a USB stick. The receipts matched names that had appeared on expense reports. The audio captured a voice with the timbre and careful phrasing Maya recognized from the penthouse. Daniel's voice, offering arrangements, promising confidentiality. The envelope she had been given at the gala suddenly fit in the pattern documented by the folder. That morning suspicion moved into something harder, proof. Maya sat with the folder on her lap and called. "Lana, you have to come in now," she said. Lana arrived 10 minutes later, carrying 2 takeaway coffees and wearing a deep teal blouse. She sat and opened the folder with fingers that trembled only slightly. The receipts were dated across several months. The messages showed a payee name and a set of times: late dinners, room numbers, small transfers. Lana leaned forward, reading the messages aloud in clipped, practical sentences. "This is a pattern, Lana. This is not a one-off." Maya held the US between her fingers and felt the weight of decision. "I want her," she said. "I want someone to ask him to answer in an official room." She felt a change inside her then. Doubt had given way to resolve. That was the second emotional shift. Suspicion to fear to clarity, then into resolve. Set a preliminary meeting within 2 days. The director was a woman named Claire who'd watched the company survive one board scandal and who kept meticulous notes. She questions in short, direct bursts and made none of the soft noises that let people avoid responsibility. "We will open an inquiry based on this folder, Claire." Her pen moving across a tablet. "You understand there will be interviews and that we will need corroboration." Her voice was neutral. Maya felt the tension rise again. The stakes were not just personal now. Lana sat close to Maya in the small boardroom, a protective presence. "Maya, tell them everything you remember about the envelope you saw months ago," Lana urged. She leaned forward and touched Maya's hand with a quick, steadying squeeze. Maya recited the memory again, this time with the receipts and audio as anchors. The office details, the time of day, the way the paper sat in Daniel's fingers. When she finished, Claire's mouth compressed in a thin line. "We'll call Miss Price in for a formal response." On the day Daniel was called to the small hearing, the office corridor felt different. It had a new brightness, a new rigidness. Daniel arrived in his tailored suit with a gold wedding band glinting at his left hand. He looked surprised in a manner that seemed practiced. "Daniel, please have a seat, Claire." Daniel smiled to the board members circling the table. "Claire, I hope this is a misunderstanding," he said. "We have an anonymous packet and statements that require explanation." Claire replied. The hearing started with clipped factual exchanges. Daniel responded in measured sentences, answering the head director directly. Maya watched him across the table. He used his tone like an instrument. He attempted to frame the exchange as professional and regrettable. Lana leaned toward Maya during a coffee break and whispered, "We need more. We need someone who will put their name to what they know." She sounded urgent in the way people sound when they have a practical plan they believe in. They waited. Then a woman entered the hearing room and sat at the edge of the door like she had already decided what she would do. She carried a slim folder and wore a gray coat with a determined line to its collar. "I'm Nora Price," the woman said. The room froze for a second at the name. Daniel's hand tightened around the pen. Maya recognized her from the company photos in the executive page. Daniel's wife. Nora did not speak in speeches. She slid photos and receipts across the table. Her head dipped as she stated facts. "Dates, hotel names, transaction numbers, these belong to me and to women I've tracked because I could not accept how he used power in private." Nora. Her words did not seek pity. They sought truth. Daniel's face changed in a way that was immediate and visible. His jaw set, his 5 o'clock shadow taking a harder line. He attempted to interrupt 3 times in quick succession. The exchanges that followed were sharp and short. "Nora, this is..." Daniel began. "Daniel, sit and answer the questions." "Claire." Her voice did not allow Daniel to take the room. "This is a private matter." Daniel, voice rising a tone. "This is a workplace matter." Claire returned. "You offered private arrangements that affect employees." Maya felt the air in the room tilt. That tilt was not poetic, it was physical. People shifted in their chairs, phones were angled, pens were set down. The hearing opened into something broader now. Daniel's wife had turned rumor into public evidence. The shift here was from private pressure to public accountability, an emotional shift for Maya from fear into a guarded, careful relief. Daniel tried once more to control the narrative. He used measured facts, names, and a practiced cadence to suggest innocence. Then a woman from marketing rose and gave a short statement about a sealed envelope she had received and then declined a proposition. Her name was Pryor, and she described the moment in clean sentences. Location, time, the evidence she had saved. Her presence created a web of corroboration. "What you did was wrong." Pryor directly to Daniel, and the room held the statement like a struck chord. Daniel's color changed. He tried to speak and found that the words did not have the same power now that more people named the same actions. The board members asked pointed questions. Daniel's answers grew shorter, and the small smile that had once disarmed tightened into something brittle. He fought to keep control, but each named witness and each photographed receipt chipped away at his polished authority. The climax of the hearing arrived when the CEO's legal counsel read a timeline aloud and asked Daniel to account for hotel charges that matched times when women had reported unexpected meetings. Daniel faltered. He apologized in a way that sounded like a contract clause rather than contrition. "May I tell them why you refused?" Lana insisted in a quick whisper. "Say what you felt then. Say what you chose." Lana's voice pushed Maya into action. Maya, she spoke in short sentences, naming concrete sensations instead of ideas. "He offered money, he offered safety, he offered discretion. I declined because I would have had to hide the truth. I would have had to leave pieces of myself out of sight. "I won't do that." She did not use the phrase dignity as a slogan. She explained through detail what she would have given up. The way she held her head, the time with friends, the quiet honesty at home. 3 board members exchanged looks. Someone excused themselves and left the room with a tablet. The company counsel closed the file and asked the board for a suspension pending investigation. The decision came quietly and then with force. Daniel was suspended and escorted from the building, with corporate security walking by his side. He paused in the corridor as he passed Maya and Lana. For a moment he met Maya's eyes. "This isn't over," he said. "It is over between you and me," Maya answered. Her voice was steady. She did not ask for revenge. She described consequences instead of indulging in triumph. Security guided him past a line of employees who watched with various small reactions. Some with mouths open, some with faces blank, some with the small, private nods of people who had kept similar secrets. Daniel's wife remained in the hearing room, silent now but present. That silence had weight. It was a witness that did not need performance. After Daniel left, Lana and Maya stood in the empty boardroom corridor. The light above the tiles was fluorescent and unromantic. It revealed hairs on their arms and the exact color of their shirts. They did not hug. Lana reached out and squeezed Maya's shoulder in a practical, careful gesture. "You did the right thing, Lana." Her words were small and precise. Maya closed her eyes for a second and let the tightness in her chest loosen by a fraction. They walked out through the back stairwell to avoid curious faces. At dusk, the stairwell light cast a warm glow along concrete steps. The sound of a distant bus hummed through the stairwell vent. Maya stopped on a landing, the city breathing beyond the window. She sat on the step and unhooked the delicate gold necklace she had been wearing since college. The chain slid through her fingers. The pendant caught the stairwell light and flashed once before she let it drop into her palm. She considered the pendant as if it were a decision made tangible, a small, gleaming thing that had meant comfort in other contexts and chains in another. She unclasped the necklace slowly and then, in a single motion, let it go into the pocket of her leather tote. That motion was not rhetorical. It was an action that sealed a choice. Maya felt the last of her fear settle into a quiet steadiness. The emotion that had driven her, suspicion, had moved through fear and clarity and emerged as resolve. Lana waited a moment, then said, "What's next?" In a voice that assumed plans, Maya named them aloud. Her inquiry, legal follow-up if needed, a note to the women who had stepped forward asking if they would like support. She also named a small, practical step. She would take her vacation days next month and sleep without checking work email for a week. These were not declarations of transformation. They were actions that mapped out the near future. At the office exit, Maya paused and saw Nora Price for a second in the lobby, speaking quietly with a security officer. Nora's expression was not triumphant. It was a look contained precise sadness and the relief that comes from having done something necessary. Maya walked past and said, "Thank you, Nora," and Nora nodded once. Outside, the street smelled of warm asphalt and coffee trucks. The city light softened as it fell. Maya reached into her tote and touched the necklace where it lay flat against her wallet. She did not put it back on. Instead, she closed the tote and shouldered it. She walked alone down the tree-lined street with the confident, even steps she had inherited from decisions practiced quietly earlier in her life. The leaves whispered under the streetlights. She did not speak to anyone. A bus pulled away at the curb and a man crossed the street with papers in his hand. Maya passed a small bakery still bright and smelled yeast and sugar for a second, then kept going. She had chosen the sequence of actions that would shape the days to come. Report submitted, evidence logged, witnesses supported. Those were concrete things that would carry forward. When she reached the corner, she unclasped her fingers from the tote strap and let herself breathe in a way that was practical and unobtrusive. The final choice in the chapter was not a speech. It was an unclasped necklace and a step down a quiet street. The chapter ended with that single movement into the dusk as the investigative process began and as the company recalibrated. Maya had refused the offer that would have cost her privacy and the right to tell the whole truth, and she had set the next steps into motion. She did not look back. The last sound was the steady click of her heels on pavement and the distant murmur of the city. She kept walking and the necklace stayed inside her bag, hidden and chosen. A loose decision now packed away with the rest of the evidence and the folder that would sit on an investigator's desk. The chapter closes on Maya's action. She unclasped the gold chain and walked away down the tree-lined street, carrying the choice she had made in concrete steps and in a quiet, deliberate departure.